Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see so many people turn out for tonight's consultation. First of all, I want to say, I'm going to let you know, I'm not part of the review of the regulations. I've contributed to them just like you have, but I am an independent community member, and I am a lawyer. But most of all, I'm just like you, community activist. I'm here to ensure that our rights as Canadians are safe. I've heard a lot of things since I came here. I wasn't here from the beginning because I was at court, but I heard a lot of things come up here, and I wanted to speak to the audience and answer a few questions and clarify some misconceptions and feelings that are passing around the room. And in order to understand what I'm saying, would take a lot of experience in, first of all, being carded, which I have been, but also negotiating and speaking with the Police Services Board, the Ontario government, and the Ministry of Community Safety. So what I'm going to explain to you, I really want you to pay attention and take it in. Okay? So first of all, these regulations that we have here, they are not a new law. They are not a new introduction to formalized carding. What they are is a synopsis of Supreme Court decisions and the Charter of Rights for Canada, put into a format for police officers specifically to learn from and follow and govern their actions with the community. I know it seems like it's reversed. It seems like these were put to legalize carding. They are not. Under Canadian law, primarily under the Charter, everyone is free from arbitrary detention, Section 9. You have a right not to be arbitrarily detained. If these regulations were to be struck, you still have the right not to be arbitrarily detained. Under Section 8, you have the right not to be unreasonably searched and any property seized. And under Section 7, you have the right to liberty. So the reason why we have these regulations is because, primarily, officers have not been doing their jobs properly when it comes to interactions with specifically the African Canadian community. Think about how many things you've seen in the media lately in regards to officers' behavior. The seizure of evidence and eating marijuana, right? That's not legal, but officers still do it. Some officers, I'm not going to say all officers, some officers have done that. There's seizures of property from evidence lockers. It's not legal, but some officers have done it. So the arbitrarily stopping of citizens and demanding information is not legal. It never has been. It never will be. But because our community has been targeted, they stay silent. They don't speak up. And when we don't speak up, we don't get results. 5 years ago, people started speaking up. Even before that, people started speaking up. The media did not listen. The media did not pay attention. As of 2013, it caught on. The media started paying attention. 2015, the government stepped in and said, we have to stop this practice because it is corrosive. So what I'm trying to say is that we have all the tools in front of us. Primarily, you have no obligation to ever speak to anybody in this country. As long as you're on Canadian soil, you have the right to silence in all circumstances. Now, knowing how the interactions can play out, sometimes it's not advisable to antagonize the situation, or knowing that you may be in a threat, sometimes you will have to speak. But you have that right. What you have to do is remember the officer you're speaking to, know their badge number, so you can lodge a complaint, because without complaints, things don't happen. This review is here because the community has complained. Legal professionals, community activists came out in force from 2013 on at Police Services Board meetings and ensured that these policies were put in place to govern the way the police interact. I've heard a lot of talks about receipts. Receipts are useful for this reason. If you get stopped and no officer is obliged to provide you with a receipt on that interaction, how are you going to know who to complain to and who to complain about? Once you're provided that receipt, you have the officer's badge number, you have the reason for the stop, And at that point, you still don't have to give any information. If an officer right now tries to stop you and ask you for information and you refuse to talk, he's still obliged to provide you with a receipt. So these are some things our community does not understand. And I know my brother Damian mentioned, what about these exceptions? Yes, the exceptions are a problem. They create a situation where officers may be able to convolute something and get away with not following the regulations. But at no point can any officer arbitrarily detain you, illegally search and seize you, or arrest you or abuse you. When those things happen, it's imperative you speak to somebody. You have to contact somebody you trust in the community that has connections with somebody such as myself or other lawyers who are willing to provide the fight for you, willing to take these tasks to court through the OIPRD, through the Human Rights Tribunal, through any of the police agencies. So what's most important that you take away from today is you have a provincial government right now that is willing to make these changes, that has made these changes, and actually has followed up on these changes. The regulations were put in place already. This consultation is because the provincial government, justice, people in the justice community understand there's still a problem that's existing. I know personally of cases of people who have told me, I've been carded, I've been stopped. Right? So you have to understand that the regulations are complicated, yes, but the solution is simple. Remember who's talking to you, remember you have the right to silence, and remember if you're demanded information, you should be provided with a receipt. And for those people who are guilty of something, if you're guilty of something, the cops will arrest you. They will arrest you, and then you will face your charges in court. But for all those innocent people, you do not have to overextend yourself. Stand strong, be respectful, don't put yourself in a bad situation, but understand only through the complaints process will things ever change. Okay?
Thank you.
And I'm willing to stay back behind to answer any questions beyond this meeting.